Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I'm your host, Ayana Carter. Joining us this evening is the Managing Director of the Environmental Management Authority, Mr. Hayden Romano. Good evening, Mr. Romano, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Ayana, and thank you for having me on your show.
Firstly, can you tell us what the role and function of the EMA is?
Ayana, in 1995, coming out of the 1992 Rio Conference, which was really when the whole Earth movement started, governments all over the world recognized that they needed to form environmental agencies. In our case, in Trinidad and Tobago case, our government was very clear that they wanted an agency to look into the sustainable development of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, they formed the Environmental Management Authority, which is charged with the management of Trinidad and Tobago's environment, really focusing on sustainable development. The EMA is tasked with a number of functions, not only regulating the environment through environmental permits, and these permits include the Certificate of Environmental Clearance permit, the water permits, the waste permits, the noise permits, the environmentally sensitive areas and environmentally sensitive species rules. So that's one function of the EMA, regulation. There's a major function of the EMA with respect to public education. And I think you will see this in all the programs that we do and that are available on our website, www.ema.co.tt, and on our YouTube channel. You will also see this through our schools program, because we have a very intensive schools program at all levels, the primary level, the secondary level, and in some instances, the tertiary level. We are also tasked with coordinating environmental functions amongst the various agencies. So we work closely with the TTPS. We work closely with various ministries, the Ministry of Planning and Development, which is our line ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture, the number of agencies, because we're here to coordinate the environmental functions. And then we also work with the private sector, NGOs and CBOs with respect to environmental management. So it's a wide-ranging responsibility, wide-ranging functions.
What are some of the common complaints that you receive at the authority, and how does the authority address those complaints?
The number one complaint that the authority receives is noise. And there is a certain level of misunderstanding, and because noise is a serious nuisance. Noise has now been identified by the World Health Organization as a public health nuisance. And therefore, these complaints are real. From neighbors, having no regard for their neighbors and playing music at all hours of the day and all hours of the night at ridiculous levels. From events, from factories and various manufacturing facilities located in residential areas. And the challenge that the EMA faces is that the EMA is established in 1995. There are a lot of agencies established before 1995 to treat with a lot of these issues. You have the planning agencies, you have the local government bodies, you have the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service under the Summary Offences Act and under nuisance, and therefore they are more aligned in terms of dealing with these issues, because the EMA's role really was to treat with events and the granting of permits to various organizers to make sound above the prescribed levels. That was the EMA's role, not really to deal with your neighbor making noise or a business making noise in your neighborhood. But understanding the nuisance of noise, the EMA will take all the reports, and we will try to the best of our ability to treat with all reports, including referring it to the local government authorities, referring it to the police, and doing referrals to all the various agencies who we feel might have a role in terms of solving the nuisance.
And as we on the issue of noise pollution, at a recent Joint Select Committee of Parliament, the Citizens Against Noise Pollution Trinidad and Tobago, they said that the EMA and the TTPS aren't really enforcing any of these existing laws when it comes to noise pollution. What are your comments on that?
Now, we congratulate all these citizens for coming together, because we think it's necessary, it's important for us as community to get together to treat with some of these concerns. The comment that the EMA and the TTPS is not treating with the noise complaints is, there is a challenge in the courts at this point in time, and it was a matter that happened at the Queen's Park, Savannah. The promoter took the EMA to court. The EMA lost in the court. The EMA has appealed the judgment. It was heard in, I think, November last year, and we are awaiting on the decision of the appeal court, because basically what the judgment said was neither the EMA nor the TTPS had the authority to shut down an event if the nuisance level wasn't clearly explained. I'm not a lawyer, and maybe I'm saying it wrong, but the bottom line is that the judge said that we didn't have the authority. We have appealed the case, and we are waiting on the decision of the appeal court. So yes, maybe they are right. I mean, under the EMA's legislation, we cannot shut down an event. What happens is if there is a breach of the noise pollution rules, meaning that the person went above the variation limit or the prescribed limit in the noise pollution rules, then we can take action against the person after the event. However, if we use the powers of the police, and we do have an environmental police unit in the EMA, which consists of special reserve police officers, then through the police legislation, the Summary Offences Act, we do have the authority to shut down the event. That is the police powers. However, this has now been tested in the courts, and we are really waiting a decision from the courts.
So you mentioned the levels, the noise pollution levels. What are those levels?
So during the day, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., the level is 80 decibels. From 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. the following morning, the level is 65 decibels. So when we grant you a variation during the day, the maximum we will go to is 85 decibels. And during the evening, it will depend on the location of the event. Generally, we would not grant a variation after 2 a.m. So between 2 a.m. And depending on the location, I think 6 or 7 a.m., the levels will have to be 65 decibels.
Walk us through. Your office receives a complaint. What happens next?
So whether it's through the hotline, through our email, or through a telephone call. Our hotline people will take down all the information. We will then go out and investigate the complaint. Depending on the nature of the complaint, we may ask our EPU, our Environmental Police Unit, to take out the meters and actually measure the amount of noise that is being made. In many cases, once the perpetrator, sees the EPU and they take out the equipment, the noise levels will be low down. So that is also a challenge, and that is a serious challenge because people keep on telling us that they're complaining about their neighbors. They call the police. As soon as the police arrive, the noise levels go right down. As soon as the police leave, the noise levels go back up. And therefore, maybe, maybe we need to change the laws, including the noise pollution laws. Maybe it's time for an amendment. We're hoping that the Joint Select, based on all the views of all the various stakeholders, is going to provide some element of what is necessary to be changed and what we can do differently to ensure that communities are able to have a good night's sleep.
So switching gears now, what are some of the ongoing projects conducted by the EMA?
In terms of public education, we're doing a lot of stuff with various private sector groups, really informing them in terms of the air pollution rules and what is necessary in terms of their applications for permits for the air pollution rules. We keep on doing a lot of sensitization sessions with respect to the CEC rules. The waste rules only came into law last year, May. So we've also been doing a lot of sensitization sessions. So those sensitization sessions is with respect to our rules. In terms of projects, we have the Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency, which is funded by the Global Environmental Facility. And that's really to meet Trinidad and Tobago's commitment with respect to the Paris Agreement. And this is with respect to transparency in terms of all the stuff that we need to report to show that we're complying with the Paris Agreement. Again, another Global Environmental Facility project is the BioReach project. And really, it's looking at degraded lands around sensitive areas. And really, it's looking at what agricultural, agri-ecological investments that could be made in these areas. Of course, we have our ongoing eye care project, which is, in Trinidad and Tobago. And, eye care is one of the projects that showed how much Trinidadians and Tobagonians are into doing something for the environment. So we have been very pleased with the amount of people that, doing the work. They're doing work. Because, to put the plastics, to put the beverage containers one side, it means somebody have to do something. And they're not only doing that, they're actually delivering it to the collection sites. So that is something that we're very proud of. And coming out of that project, one of the deliverables was the EMA waste rules. The EMA waste rules are now in place. And the other thing was the beverage container deposit system, or a deposit refund system. And again, that is happening. The Ministry of Public Utilities is working quickly. And they actually, moving forward with that. So we hope that is going to happen very quickly. So I think, that we're hoping is going to be a success very soon. We are completing all the requirements for accreditation to the Green Climate Fund, which is a major fund in terms of climate change and investments. And we hope that we will be a delivery partner by the end of this year. So that will be something big for us. Because the Green Climate Fund, we think, could support Trinidad and Tobago, both the private sector and to a certain extent the public sector. Of course, we do have our own green fund, and ICARE is a green fund project, and that has been doing very well. So yes, lots of things happening. And of course, Monday, the 5th of June, is World Environment Day. And World Environment Day is actually the birthday of the EMA. So the EMA started on the 5th of June, 1995. So this year we'll be 28 years old. And this year the Greenleaf Awards focuses on youth and youth in climate change. So really we look forward to revealing the winners of the Greenleaf Awards and really the youth edition of the Greenleaf Awards on Monday.
So after 28 years, Mr. Romano, is the EMA fulfilling its mandate?
Yes. A young organization, but fulfilling its mandate. Of course, there's so much more for the EMA to do. Last year when we checked what we're doing with respect to the Act, we were achieving 77% of what the Act says we should be achieving. This is last year. We're in the process of assessing how we've done in the last year, and hopefully by next month we will know what the figure looks like. But we're sure it's now more than 77%. We are responsible, we facilitate the revision of the National Environmental Policy, the NEP, and that last revision was done in 2018. And there are 6 priority areas. Can't remember how many thematic areas and how many policy statements, but lots of policy statements and lots of thematic areas. But the 6 priority areas and the NEP was derived from consultations throughout Trinidad and Tobago with the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So the NEP contains what we as Trinidadians and Tobagonians want to see with respect to our environment, because it came directly from these consultations. I think one thing that we can say is, and maybe we're not doing, we can do a much better job, is that more people should be familiar with the National Environmental Policy, because it's our National Environmental Policy. Again, it's available on the website, www.ema.co.tt, and really we want to urge all citizens to read the National Environmental Policy. Unlike a number of other policies, Section 31 of the EMA Act mandates that all government ministries and agencies must comply with the National Environmental Policy. And therefore, all of us have to comply with the National Environmental Policy. The EMA is showing compliance by our annual reports. Our annual reports are due every year. We have to submit it to the minister by April, the end of April of every year. And the 2022 annual report has been submitted to the minister responsible for the environment, the Honorable Penelope Beckles-Robinson, Minister of Planning and Development. And in the NEP, we have shown what is happening with respect to the National Environmental Policy. How is the EMA complying with the National Environmental Policy? And we also try to show how other agencies are complying in terms of what other agencies are doing, developing indicators, using the National Environmental Policy. That is a work in progress, because 4 months in the year is really a tight deadline for a lot of ministries and agencies, but they're doing better. But we hope as the years go by, it'll be even better. that we can get the information so we can show how Trinidad and Tobago is doing with respect to its national environmental policy and with respect to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because the NEP is aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Can you share some of the recommendations that are contained in the NEP?
So the National Environmental Policy, which was revised in 2018, and this revision involved a lot of public consultations, both in Trinidad and Tobago. Coming out of all these consultations, so we can clearly say that the National Environmental Policy is Trinidad and Tobago's citizenry national environmental policy, because this is what citizens wanted to see in a national environmental policy. So there are 6 priority areas: sustainably managing natural assets, improving the local environment, evolving a greener economy, fostering an environmentally responsible society, addressing climate change and environmental natural disasters, sustainably managing natural assets, and protecting environmental and human health through pollution control. So if we look at the priority area, protecting environmental and human health through pollution control, we can think of the waste rules that have just came into being in 2022. And that is going to be significant in terms of waste disposal and moving Trinidad and Tobago more to a circular economy. That, together with the work that Ministry of Public Utilities is doing in terms of the whole integrated waste management system and in terms of recycling, is going to move us forward. In terms of greening the economy, we see the recent renewable energy project that is being supported by government, again, greening the local economy. So there is a lot happening in Trinidad and Tobago, and what we're trying more to do is to really monitor what projects are taking place and how is it aligned to the national environmental policy. And doing this really is a cabinet-appointed National Council for Sustainable Development, which is chaired by myself and consists of both public sector, private sector, NGOs, CBOs. So it's quite a mixed group. And we're coming up with action plans to see exactly what projects are taking place, who is doing the projects, and when we can expect completion. So it's a very, very interesting project and something that we think is going to bear a lot of fruit.
Now, what are some of the challenges that you face in the execution of your duties?
Wow, I think the major challenge is really getting boots on the ground, getting people to do the job. And that challenge is related, I suppose, to every other agency. Resources. There's so many priorities, so many competing and conflicting priorities. And the EMA is just one of them. And therefore, we will never have all the resources we need to do a job. And really what we're trying to do is to do the best job with respect to the resources that we have. We are trying to improve technology in terms of digitizing and things like using GIS, trying to make it easier. We are trying in terms of easing doing business with the EMA in terms of putting in place online banking and other online transactions. So, because remember, we're trying to decrease the amount of paper that is being used. So that we're doing. Challenges in terms of getting the public to understand the role of the EMA, and we have to take some responsibility for that. Maybe we're not doing a good job in terms of telling people exactly what is the EMA's role versus other agencies' role. And we will continue that fight.
And from challenges, let's go to your accomplishments. What are some of your major accomplishments, and what would you like to do more of?
Well, I think when you look at the EMA and a 28-year-old organization that have been able to put in place all these all this subsidiary legislation, from the CEC rules to the waste rules in 2022. We've also had to update the water pollution rules. So we've done an update on the water pollution rules. Some of the other rules now need updating, like the noise pollution rules. I think we haven't done a bad job in terms of public education. Of course, we can do more. Our Green Leaf Awards, we think, is a significant achievement. And I think, a lot of people appreciated at our 25th anniversary in 2020, although it occurred in 2021 and it was virtual because of COVID, we honored and we celebrated people who had given 25 years and more of their lives to the environment. And I think it was a great, people felt really appreciated that the EMA recognized them with a Green Leaf Awards. Some of our projects, including iCare project, we recently completed, or just in the process of completing, a global environmental facility, IW Eco project, which involved quarry rehabilitation. And coming out of that handbook, we actually have a handbook with respect to rehabilitation of quarries, which is a significant issue in Trinidad, not so much in Tobago.
And what would you like to do more of?
Wow, what we want to do more of is hoping that we will get the accreditation to the Green Climate Fund so that, we will have funds to do more projects and to involve the private sector, because we don't think we do enough work with the private sector right now. Because our work with the private sector really is them applying for permits, and maybe every now and then we might do some engagement, some sensitization sessions with them. So I think we like to do more work with the private sector. We would like to do more work in terms of our environmental officers program. So we have environmental officers in nearly every single government agencies, but we don't do enough with them. So we want to do more work in terms of our environmental officers. We would like to do more in terms of youth. The challenge there, of course, is resources. So we need more public education officers, to get out there in terms of the schools, businesses, NGOs, CBOs. We would love to do much more with our environmentally sensitive areas and our environmentally sensitive species. Update management plans, have communities involved in the work with these species and with these areas. We do already do some work with UE and UTT, but again, we'd love to do more work with them. But as I said, the challenge is always resources.
Now, recently in the media, we see where the EMA is launching an investigation into a oil dumping truck, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think it came across a lot of social media with this truck dumping, it looks like waste oil into a river. Thankfully, what they call it, a concerned citizen got the truck number, and therefore, we are working with the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, and hopefully we'll be able to bring the culprit, take some action against the culprit. Because dumping is a serious problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Not only dumping like we saw with the waste oil, but dumping of garbage in lonely areas, dumping of tires. And therefore, we really need to look at how we treat with these incidents. And I think we really need, what you will call all the agencies to come together to treat and deal with it. In some cases, yes, the fines are going to be very low because the legislation is very old. But we do have the Litter Act, and we just need to enforce. And I think we need to do a much better job of enforcement throughout the agencies.
So then what are some of the areas that we can improve on as a nation?
I think that is one. Dumping. You still see in 2023 people throwing stuff out car windows. You still see, bottles all over the place. That's thrown by somebody. So there is so much that we can do with respect to waste. And I think that is important. We as individuals have to recognize, if we want a better Trinidad and Tobago, we have to do some work. A lot of us could compost. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to compost. I mean, if we compost all the organic matter that we throw into the garbage that ends up in the landfill, we could reduce the amount of material going to already overfilled landfills. So we can reduce in terms of the beverage containers, the plastics, the bottles, the glass bottles, the packs, the Tetra packs, and now we could reduce in terms of the organics. It takes some work, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's going to work for us in Trinidad and Tobago. So therefore, we could really, practice the 5 R's. We could reuse, we could refuse plastic bags from organizations. We could reuse, we could recycle, we could repurpose. We have so much that we can do, because we all have to remember we live on 2 very small islands, and therefore we need to take much better care of these 2 little islands. We could educate, our children. I mean, or in some cases, our children might be educating us and telling us what is the right thing to do. We could get more involved as communities. We have some communities in Trinidad and in Tobago. I mean, communities like Cashew Gardens community, who are doing fantastic work with respect to the environment. We need more communities like that. Because, once you have the community involved, I think, we could start holding each other accountable. And not only accountable for environmental infractions with respect to waste, but environmental infractions with respect to noise. Nobody should be disturbing their neighbors with noise at all ungodly hours of the morning. The communities need to get involved.
Mr. Romano, what are some of the performance indicators that the authority uses in order to measure its impact?
If you look at our annual reports, we've started using the NEP, and we've started coming up with indicators. So we have indicators with respect to biodiversity, how many species do we have as environmentally sensitive species. We have indicators with waste, which we expect to get from solid waste, in terms of has the recyclables increase, has the amount of garbage increase, what does it look like? We have indicators, so that's waste. We have indicators with respect to agriculture, gender, in terms of how many women are involved in agriculture. So we do have a lot of indicators in our annual report, and it's the annual state of the environment report, which forms part of the annual report. And again, we really urge people to go on the website and look at the annual reports. The 2022 annual report is not theirs yet, because it's still with the minister, and once the minister takes it through cabinet, it will be laid in Parliament. But the 2021 annual report has already been laid in Parliament, so it's available on the website, and it goes right down from 2021 to all the other annual reports.
You spoke earlier about increased education, especially among the young people, school children, etc. What do you have in place now to educate that age group?
Well, if you look, we have story time with Auntie Alyssa, which is on the website, which is for really the young age people. We have environmental clubs in the schools, which we support. And lots of lots of information is available. And once the schools call, we try to facilitate in terms of sending out our environmental officers or one of our other technical officers to treat with the schools and to try to educate the children. And really, sometimes camps, children's camps. We go to a lot of children's camps during the Easter and the summer, again, just to try to preach about environmental management and the importance of environmental management.
So we could see some of your officers during some of these July, August vacation camps
Oh, yeah.
going around to
Yeah.
schools and other agencies.
Yes.
All right, so you mentioned about the performance indicators that the authority uses in order to measure its success and its impact. Is there a global index that we also have to follow?
I think the global index that we look in terms of, well, it's human health and the environment will really be the Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
And as I said, the NEP is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, but the MPD, the Ministry of Planning and Development, actually is monitoring how Trinidad and Tobago is doing with respect to the Sustainable Development Goals.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about the court proceedings.
Court proceedings?
Yes. The Tobago House of Assembly and the EMA versus the Tobago House of Assembly. What can you tell us about that proceeding?
The only thing, Ayana, that I can tell you about that proceeding is that the EMA got an injunction against the THA with respect to the construction of the Chauvin/Friendship Road. The judge granted the injunction last week Friday, and it was served on the THA and their contractor. The proceedings continued, and the judge, the injunction is staying in place until July 6th, when the case will be heard. So the parties are requested to do arguments and that sort of thing for July 6th. So the injunction is in place. I mean, no works are to be done on this site. And really, the best that we can do is to wait on the judgment, on the decision of the court. I mean, so. Yeah.
I know it will be sensitive at this point. So.
Very, very, very sensitive, and my lawyers always get very upset. So I have to learn how to stay quiet.
Well, looking forward, what are some of the plans in place in the authority? You know, what is the EMA doing in the next couple of months and years?
Well, in terms of years, we do have a strategic plan, 2022 to 2026. And one of the items that we have in that plan is really that we need to green the EMA further. So because I think the ambition is that by 2050, the EMA will be carbon neutral. So we've started by any new vehicle we buy must be hybrid or electric or CNG. So all parts of greening the EMA. We're in the process of changing out all the lighting to LED lights. And there is a number of other things that we need to do, including, access for differently abled, because we realize that our head office is not designed for differently abled people. So that is something that we're in the process of doing. We need to do more with respect to indicators. And we're really working through how do we improve the indicators. And that is a work in progress, because we need to do it with a lot of the other agencies as the agency responsible for coordinating environmental management in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to look at all our laws, including the EMA Act. The EMA is really proud that when the EMA was established, every single member of parliament in both houses agreed with the establishment of the EMA in that time. And we expect that any amendment to the Act will have the same support, because we know that all our politicians, all our parliamentarians are excited about the environment and are concerned about the environment. So that is something that we need to do. Not only the EM Act, the noise pollution rules, maybe the environmentally sensitive areas and the environmentally sensitive species rules. We're lucky that the water pollution rules and the waste rules, the air rules are quite recent. But the rest of them, we think it's time for amendments to those. I don't know, we will always continue in terms of projects, whether it's Green Fund projects or global environmental facility projects or projects from other international agencies. I mean, that is something that we want to continue with. Yeah. But it's an exciting time, I think, for the environment and an exciting time for the EMA.
So now that you have the opportunity to speak to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, what would you tell them in order to get them on board with the plans and the projects and to make Trinidad and Tobago a greener place?
We all need to understand that Trinidad and Tobago is ours. You know, I born here and I expect I will die here. And therefore, I want to live in somewhere that is, I don't want to live anywhere else, because this, as far as I'm concerned, is as close as you get to paradise. Yes, with all the problems. When we go out there and we look at our greenscapes, whether it's the wetlands of the Caroni or the River, or Bucco in Tobago, whether it's the main ridge in Tobago in terms of forests, or our own northern range or central range, or Trinity Hills, we live in a very beautiful country. And the only how this country can stay beautiful is each and every one of us do our part. And once we do our part, we'll continue to live in the paradise that is Trinidad and Tobago.
And that's our show. Thank you, Mr. Romano, for joining us on this episode of Delving Deeper.
Thank you so much. Totally appreciate it.
Join us at the same time next week for another episode of Delving Deeper. I'm your host, Diana Carter, and from all of us here, have a good night.